touched on it earlier about fasting and about how there is this image of what fasting really means in society. And it's like, if you tell someone that you spent a day without eating, they look at you like you're crazy, right? They're like, you're the crazy one. Whereas like I also have my own opinions on fasting, which are like, I'm not like I do it every week, but it's something that I think is very important, particularly in a spiritual sense. So I'm curious on like, have you had any experience? Like, okay, how about this? Do you ever actually talk about these kind of concepts with people in real life? Because like, obviously there's a difference when we're in our internet sphere, these kind of concepts, we're all here because we're curious, interested people. You know, do you ever talk about, you know, fasting, sexual, semen retention, your sexual practices with, you know, maybe your friendship group you can, but with people generally and kind of the real world, as it were?
I'll do that's an interesting question. It's a good question. I'll do the fasting one. So I used to, many years ago, I used to for the NHS. So you'll know what the NHS is, but probably the Americans won't. So it's a National Health Service here in the UK. It's kind of like this public health model that everybody gets access to. Very huge company. And I used to run it was still freelance, but it was a type 2 diabetic coaching course for individuals that were predisposed to pre-type 2 diabetes, right? So there's you know, the course material, you know, they give you the course material. They say, this is the material that you have to teach these individuals, right? Now, from my own experience, from my own work, from my research, what I've seen in the data, the most effective tool to mitigate the risk of high blood sugar is fasting. It's fasting and some form of ketogenic diet, right? And so I'm looking at the course material, right? And fasting is there, but it's like this little addition thing, like it's on the accessories page of things that might be beneficial for people, right? So what I decided to do was, as well as teaching the material, is dedicate a kind of 30-minute segment at the end of this program. And I had like, you know, 20, 30 people in each kind of class. So I'm lecturing, and then at the end I'll go, so coming back to the most effective thing that you can do is some form of restricted eating. And it's interesting to see the reactions, because people immediately think that you're promoting some form of self-starving. People think people might just dismiss it altogether. But it was interesting, as time went on, I started to actually bring in various books that certain physicians and doctors had created on the topic of fasting and the utility of fasting. So I had a lot of scientific evidence behind me to prop up the proposals I was making. But to go to your initial point, it's very funny, especially in Western cultures. I'd be curious, I'm going to ask you about what you found in the East, because I imagine it would be a little bit more relaxed in this way. But people just have this very cultural, dogmatic lens in viewing eating patterns in the West: breakfast, lunch, dinner, and snacks in between, right? That's how we eat. That's how we've always eaten. That's how we're going to continue to eat. As soon as I was proposing something like, why don't you veto the sugary cereal bowl for breakfast that you're eating every day, which is just knocking your blood sugar up sky high, spiking your insulin and turning your blood to fucking butter or whatever. Why don't you veto that and just do like lunch and dinner? You know, people absolutely lose their minds, you know. But I won't have energy throughout the day. I'm gonna get dizzy. I'm gonna be fatigued. It's an adaptation period, you know. And the main point I make to those individuals is that the only reason why you're sitting in front of me is because your ancestors had that ability to go for days, weeks without eating food, and you're having a panic attack just because you're not having your Cocoa Pops in the morning. You know, it's really quite embarrassing, you know, and I have to be careful, of course, how I'm speaking to these individuals, because they're our NHS clients. But But yeah, and I said this, by the way, I told this to the curators of the particular program. I was saying, you know, the clinical evidence suggests that a variety of fasting, time restricted eating, and fat in the diet is the most important thing to mitigate blood sugar, and it's not even a question.
Yeah.
Like, it's not even my opinion. That's what I said. It's not my opinion. It's what the data suggests. So to answer your question, yes, and it's funny. It's funny watching people squirm, because I know in, you know, 5 years, 10 years, people are going to be saying what I've been saying for, and other people have been saying for years now.
Yeah, it's pretty, like, I always find the way that like, I know from my own experiences and family experiences within the NHS, the way they treat and deal with these kind of issues. Like, I know people have had health problems in my family, and I'm saying, look, you know, you got really serious health problems. Like, you just got to look at the reality of what you're doing now and how that affects you. And I always find it really surprising that the NHS actually are very, like, they're almost too soft on people, where it's like, you don't need to like really like go hard on them. All you have to say is like, well, look at what's happening to you right now. Like, and if you don't change, this is only going to get worse. Like, but like, for example, I've heard stories in the NHS where they haven't been able to really, you know, even say that you should stop drinking to someone who's got like pretty serious liver problem. And it's like, because like, you can't really say that. It's like too offensive, or like, which is crazy. Whereas here we had an issue with where my wife had a small problem with her, with basically she was running too much. She hurt her knee, and the doctor literally said to her, you need to stop running. Like here, it's like, they're fine to say that, they're fine to tell you what you need to hear, you know. And it was, and she did, and her knee's a lot better now. She has no problems.
Tough love.
Yeah. And it's like that whole perspective I find is very, very strange, because it's, you know, this is your health. This is not something where I can kind of almost see it on something which is a bit more kind of like second order effects, where like maybe you can't tell someone like who's having like, you know, emotional problems. I can understand maybe there's difficulty in saying like, stop sleeping around. Like it's not like one-to-one. Like, I think that would help them, but you know, it's not one-to-one. Whereas if it is something like carbs, like, you know, eating sugar is going to spike your insulin. Like, it shouldn't be hard to tell someone like, you need to stop eating sweets. You know what I mean?
It's interesting. I think fundamental, like, I understand where it comes from. It comes from a place of compassion, you know, because we want to show love to people, and it's not, people don't think it is a mark of love to give somebody the truth. That's the problem that we're having in our society today.
Absolutely. And
why the leftists are going, you know, absolutely, you know, schizoid at the moment. You know, they're just completely in absolute, you know, clown and delirium world at the moment. But that's how I actually framed the initial parts of my, of when I used to do that, but the type 2 diabetes cohort. So I used to give an introduction. I used to say, like, right, you've just come back from your GP, and GP said to you, your blood sugar is 47 or something like that, HbA1c marker, which is essentially the hemoglobin in your blood that carries sugar, right? So they come back and they say, right, your blood is like pancake batter. You need to stop what you're doing, right? And I tell them what will happen if they don't change, right? So, you know, what's actually really interesting about type 2 diabetes is that to describe it in the simplest way is that if you leave sugar unchecked in the blood, it will rot. So what happens is you literally start to rot from the peripherals of your like capillaries in your fingers inwards, right? So you've of course heard, you know, amputations, and I tell people this. I'm saying what will happen is the capillaries in your fingers will start to get destroyed. You'll get neuropathy, so you won't have any sensation in your fingers or in your toes, right? I heard a story of a guy who had neuropathy in his foot, was in the garage, stepped on a nail in the garage, didn't feel it, right? Just kept on going throughout his day, got an infection, you know, lost the lower part of his limb because he had that, right? The capillaries in your eyes will start to rot. You'll go blind. You know, you will start to rot. Right? It's horrible. It's horrible. Just because you don't have, and it goes back to emotional control, that ability to have full autonomy of that craving feeling, you know, that you're not craving. and that craving is driving the wheel. So, you know, for some people that's a wake-up call.
Yeah.
My father actually had that, and he changed his life completely after having that. You know, he works out like he's getting on now. He's probably 65, you know, but he fasts every single day, right? Only eats between like 2 o'clock and 7 o'clock, goes to the gym in the morning. Like, he's on it. He's lost so much weight. And it's a testament, I think, to that tough love, because I had that conversation with him. I was like, look, this is what can happen if you don't change, you know. But some people will cry and say, you're being mean, but I like my strawberry donuts, you know. That's fine, you can keep eating them,
but I'm going to tell you what happens if you do, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, so